All right, we are back. Thanks. The panel just before on layer 2 was great, and we are going to talk about something a bit different. Gaming and GameFi, hot topic of the moment, and actually a hot topic of the past 1.5 years on the Ethereum chains, but also everywhere else. And for this panel, I'm very grateful to actually be joined by 2 major players in the game space in general, starting with Florent Valery from Gameloft and from John Pan from OKX. So I will just let them introduce themselves first, and then after we're gonna jump in the subject. So John, you want to start?
Yeah, thank you, Max, for organizing that event. My name is Jonathan. So I'm the director of OKX chain ecosystem development for Southeast Asia. OKX run actually like a layer 1 blockchain that is EVM and Cosmos SDK. We have like an infrastructure that facilitates basically project to deploy on our chain. Currently, like our main focus is on DeFi infrastructure and also GameFi. And I'm very glad that we could discuss today about that topic.
Thanks, thanks, John. Really glad to have you on this panel. And Florent, nice to see you.
Sure. Thank you, Maxime, for having us, and Atato for organizing the event. So I'm Florent, Managing Director for Gameloft APAC. Very pleased to be here today and share some insights on the gaming side from a more traditional player in the industry. So we've been developing games, publishing games for past 22 years. We have about 190 titles, and one of the Tron franchise that you might be knowing are Atato, Disney titles as well, with one released quite recently, like called Disney Dreamlight Valley. So we're positioning from pivoting from mobile towards console and PC, which is a major shift. And of course, blockchain gaming has been a big disruption. So I'd love to share some views on this soon.
Yeah, and thanks, Florent, and thanks, John. And I'm going to start by saying, actually, for some of the guys that are joining, this week was the Blockchain Week in Thailand, and we also had major events in Vietnam where you were, John. We were very surprised here to see on the conferences a lot of game company. I guess you saw the same in Vietnam, right, John?
Yeah, that's correct. So actually, like the reason I'm myself very surprised about that is because most of the gaming, like a traditional gaming studio, they are based in Southeast Asia and mainly focused on Vietnam. And because of the trend, GameFi and Web3 Web3 wave, those studios start to have like a little bit of interest and focus on the Web3 GameFi, and that's why we see so much like traction and interest from those studios today.
Okay. I just would like to go back a bit to last year. It is the first time that we basically heard about GameFi, and I think I would like to have your opinion, Florent. Were you surprised about the enthusiasm around that new type of gaming, or were you? How did you look at the space when it started?
Right. So it was big in the news. Of course, it drew the attention, I think, of all the major players, just like us. But the fact or the idea of games making dollars for the players is not so new, right? It's just the technology that goes behind it. With Web3 and blockchain came into the pictures and became hit with the tokens. But again, it was before like writing, loot box, all the traditional habits, I would say, of hardcore players that play the games on PC console and then would sell it to the other community of players because they spend a lot of time, right, finding those very rare items. It was just not in the legitimized space, I would say, for the trading. And I think the blockchain enabled that transparency or traceability. And that's really what made the gameplay different last year, right? So the monetization for players were before against the publishers' terms and conditions, whereas with the Web3, we really saw a better framework, right, to do this kind of activity of trading items, right? So it's not so new. And if we focus on what happened last 2021 year, the kind of games, right, Play to Earn promise was very simple in terms of gameplay, grind-based, right? With gameplay not so in depth, right? Or not gameplay, no gameplay at all in some cases, right? And we see this changing very fast, and this is where we're pretty hopeful for the future
Okay.
that will come.
We're gonna come back on the playability of those games a bit later in the panel. But I mean, John, OKX is an exchange, and were you so GameFi was not part of your core business? Were you surprised about the rising of gaming on Web3 last year?
Yeah, actually, for us, like it was like a totally different industry, right? Game and centralized exchanges have no direct link. However, for us, like where we have a lot of interest is on the user base. That's been on the amount of users doing gaming and now enter into crypto via GameFi. Like Florent mentioned, I think like what's the difference between those games from the Web 2 and I would say Web 3 game is a narrative, is the technology. Because if you take some example like World of Warcraft or RuneScape, those players, they gather and play a lot of time on those games, gathering like some item on game, and they can sell it on what we call black market in a way, because there's no like a standard infrastructure for them to do so. Like for example, on World of Warcraft, you can gather gold and you can sell those gold against real money. And there's actually a demand for that on some website. I call that dark website because I don't know them and they are not official. And there's a lot of games that work in the same way. Like I think Habbo Hotel, Counter-Strike at that time, and also RuneScape does that. So I think where blockchain go into the scene is because they offer, like I would say, a sort of an infrastructure for that to happen in a more standard way and to facilitate basically that process for user. For us, we are very interested because we definitely want to capture like the user base for those players to participate in the Web3 and to basically trade the token either on DEX or centralized exchange. And we are very fascinated by the fact like it moved very fast. Like I see game, raising money with like literally nothing, and some gaming studio who has like a real product, they are struggling to raise money. So I was fascinated by that process, and I know like, and I think like we are very early in the industry because as Florent mentioned, like we see games that have no game, to be honest, and it's not even like they call that GameFi, but it's not even a game, to be honest, in my opinion. I say that because I mean I have a strong opinion on that because I play game a lot, and when I see those GameFi, I don't consider them as a game. I consider them not game yet. But like I think like it's a time where like the development will shift, where we will see more and more quality game and with like a more sustainable economy behind. Yes.
All right. So before going into that, this is where the question is going to come later on. But basically, yeah, fast forward today, the market crashed. Let's be honest with it. We saw a lot of those games with no real game behind disappearing. What are the effects that you are seeing on the crash on basically the building of those games? Florent, maybe you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I think, I mean, the game developers are realizing, right, it's not only like earning focused sort of gameplay that they need to design, but the mechanism really need to be stronger than this make money sort of promise, right? And go back to what makes a game, which is fun first. And I think games like Ghana Games really put this big into the focus or spotlight. Like I do games for people to spend their time, have fun. And we did a lot of research, right, internally at my company on consumer insights, right? What they're looking or aspire to do in games, right, to make it appealing, be it on Web 2, Web 3, or maybe hybrid, right? And I think this social community aspect really comes in the top ranking as to what makes a game fun in those days, right? Then you might need IP franchise, right? So NBA Top Shot was big because you had NBA behind. And a lot of new games coming out, I think, will be also relying on strong IP. So that would be an interesting evolution, right? On what people's developing games are focusing on right now. And ease of use will definitely make it a big change, right? How to make it a bigger mass adoption in terms of user base. I mean, just if we look back at what, like for me, the biggest was still Axie Infinity. think in terms of numbers, it was like 3 million at top users, right, for that particular game. Whereas a gamer overall, market size is 3 billion gamers. So we're talking about 1% of the gamer population, which means huge opportunity to capture. Of course, even though we are in the bear market, or the mechanism of what made the success previously of play-to-earn games is evolving. Even the naming, I think we're talking of play and earns, or play and give back to the society, or play. I mean, there are different mechanisms or way to call it, and I think that's going to make a big difference.
John, did you see, I mean, on the token side of it, I would say game tokens, like I'm obviously the crash, but are you seeing development pausing? Maybe people were concentrating on some aspect of the games?
Yeah. So obviously, like during that time, like we see like a volume on those gaming token, like very, very strong. However, like since the crash, I can say like those gaming project focus is toward now the development of the game, if they survive, because some of those games, like to be honest, disappear totally after the crash. That means there's no cash for running the operation anymore, and they either have to fundraise or just gave up. However, for the gaming studio or the game project that survive, like you mentioned Gala Game, for example, they are more focused now on the aspect of the fun, or I would say the lore behind, because so it's very hard for me to respond after Florent, because he took all the good idea to discuss about, but I agree with him, like, those IP and all those universe are very important for like a game to be successful, because it attach the user or the player to that universe. Like, we're taking the example of Blizzard, for example. They have a lore that is very very worked and very designed for like people to be very attached to a character or to a universe. So basically having those IP help to bring those users on board on the Web3 and on those GameFi, like the lore, or like the orc, the human, all the stuff, make people to want to be attached to the story. So I would say IP and a good story make a game very fun. And sometimes, I myself play some game that I spend money on, and I don't even expect to make money out of it, because the game is just too fun. Like taking the example of the universe of League of Legends, you spend money to buy skin and stuff, and to be honest, I don't expect to earn any money from playing those games. It's just purely fun. So if you can have basically those type of aspects in the GameFi, and on top of it have an economy that is sustainable behind to basically incentivize users to play and earn money, I mean, that's the best formula. However, right now we didn't see any model that works that way yet. I think the closest project that is around that is toward gambling and lottery. But like it's again another topic. I don't know if we can consider that as GameFi. I do consider as GameFi sometimes, if we take some game, for example, like poker or some stuff like that involve, I would say, a sort of skill. Yeah. But the rest can be a little bit tricky, because it could be considered as gambling, betting, and we might get in trouble with compliance if we do so.
Definitely.
So yeah, that's my opinion today. Yeah.
All right, and I think we have the chance here to have Florent from the traditional game industry, I would say. So I mean, how did you are what we call a AAA publisher, right? How did you saw the space? Did you you mentioned internal meetings, basically like trying to see if you guys are going to go into the space and how are you going to do it? Or maybe you decided, no, this is not for you and this is a phase, it's going to pass. Can you just give us your opinion on basically your views on GameFi and Web3 gaming?
Sure. So I'm going to give the vision from Gameloft and then my opinions, because I think traditional gaming studios all have their own say, and that's very different. This is a lot of debates, right?
Yeah.
So from Gameloft's side, I mean, the vision is really to be on every platform. I mean, that's one of the core DNA, right? And therefore, I think blockchain is a new avenue, right? So definitely that's going to be part of the discussion, right? And how to approach it is really the answer. But we always take measured steps, right? Therefore, it might be taking more time than other developers or publishers. However, this is definitely part of the thinking, right? With considered step forwards, right? As to Web3 features, maybe hybrid, between Web2 and Web3 additions of specific items, right? So gradually, and why we're doing this is also because of the user base. The existing gamers, right, have been showing especially the vocal one, a lot of reluctancy, right? So as to would they embrace the NFT and play to earn features and mechanism, or they would backlash, right? So this is to be taken into account, obviously, for some games that already have a big audience, right? So yes, this is definitely part of the discussion. We did the first attempt with a company called Epic Prime back in July 2021, which is based in Singapore, to have like exclusive trophy, codes, video NFT based on Asphalt game, right? That's something, a first attempt, right? But that was not Gameloft directly doing this. It was a third-party company, right? Adding the technology layers and Web3 experience, right? To turn somehow Asphalt 90 to a play-to-earn experience, right? So that was the first attempt. And biggest thing is not only the game developers, right? Because a lot of them, big AAA studios, just like Gameloft, are going into this space. I'm thinking about Netmarble, which are coming with already announced 10 games, right, in their lineup. So this is like another big players, of course, come to us, making a lot of noise on this scene. We had this Ubisoft yes and no on the Web3, so we have NFT, but yeah, so all the major players, Bandai, Square Enix, Zynga, do have this thinking into the consideration, and well, some of them already announced the lineup, and some of them are still pretty discreet about it, if I may say. And the last thing, Jonathan, I would say would be the platform themselves, how we distribute the games, right? So Valve, Steam, clearly against play to earn. So that's another thing that needs to be considered. On one end, the player base, but on the other end, where do you sell the games, right? And if the platform is against it, then it's another challenge that you have to face.
All right. And yeah, I mean, thanks for sharing. And I think we talked a lot about playability, right? Was talking with a game publisher the other day, and I was saying, okay, the main issue on today's Web3 game is that they are not nice, they are not fun, and so on. And he was saying, look at one of the major game which is popular today on the traditional one is Candy Crush, which is not particularly beautiful, right? But it's all about the grinding and so on, which is the same that we see in Web3. So, John, do you really think that we need to have like League of Legends based on Web3 to make it successful, or just like simple games with, I would say, money incentive?
Yeah. So for me, I think like first, like sometimes blockchain or crypto is not even applicable for game. Like we see to be honest, some game, some studio trying to adapt like a Web2 game concept on Web3 and apply blockchain. And sometimes it's just not applicable for two reasons, because the blockchain doesn't add any value on that aspect for the game, and the game is much more beautiful, more fun on Web2. I think like where blockchain and crypto is very necessary if we want to add a layer of technology on the game is mainly for the economy, or maybe like on those like skin, or I would say game assets that can be used in the game, but the game itself doesn't really need to be on blockchain. That's my opinion. Now, for the example of League of Legends on Web3, I don't think the whole game need to be on blockchain. But however, what it could be like interesting probably is like those skin, those like
so
special
NFTs.
Yeah, in sort of NFT, like so those sort of like skin, or like I would say special item that you can have on game can be like run like an economy around that on blockchain and crypto. That's what I would say. I would say that could be the application for the game itself. But like in my opinion, for a game to be successful on blockchain, it doesn't really need to be complex or very beautiful. Sometimes just a simple game, like for example Candy Crush you just mentioned, or even like a card game, or even like Uno on Web3 can be successful. It just needs to be addictive and very fun for the user, and simple, because obviously we don't want to onboard directly hardcore player on Web3, because Web3 is already hardcore. I feel like people like especially from game, they might not even know how to use a wallet or some stuff like that. So we have to be as simple as possible. One project I observed recently that have very good traction on blockchain is a chess game. And I think that business model very smart, because chess is a game that will never change. It exists for 600 years. So you basically will not have any team, or I would say burning red on developing or designing a game or even updating it. But what you need to do is just to implement like the blockchain technology behind to run this game, to have like those randomness where you either start black or either start white. And also like probably like that feature of like economy behind. So I know the team is doing that. It's a French project actually. And I was quite impressed when they pitched me the project. And I believe more on those projects because they run like an economy behind, a real economy. That's mean it's not like usually a Ponzi. And they run like a very smart model because the game, you know, they will not spend money on the game. That's mean like all the money they will raise or have is for basically make the product more solid in terms of infrastructure with the blockchain. I don't think I can name game, but like there's only one right now doing chess game on Web3, and they are quite solid. I believe more on those business model where user basically stake some money to play against another, and winner win all basically, and then probably the protocol earn a small cut or some stuff like that. I think it's more sustainable, but again, it can be, you know, tricky in terms of like how you label it. Is it like gambling? Is it betting? Quite complex to identify, but yeah, very smart business model.
Yeah. Do you agree, Flo, or you are saying, okay, maybe we need to develop special games for Web3?
No, absolutely. I think, I mean, it doesn't need to be hyper complex or very detailed, just need to be fun. So fully agree with the views of Jonathan on this. Yeah, to really meet the needs of the players, right? Because I mean, we talk about Candy Crush. If you see the audience pool of Candy Crush, it's probably not the same audience as what people think of play to earn or Web3 as of now, right? So the audience sizing, I think, is very important to who is designed that particular game, right? Male, female, which location. We talk a lot about Southeast Asia. Could be a mahjong game, could be trading card games. It's very big right now. And IP, as Jonathan said, is definitely a nice plus to have.
And a quick question for you, Florent. Do you think like NFTs are going to be tradable between different studios in the future? Or?
Well, I mean, that's what we all dream for, I guess. At least the characters or the lands you might own, or some specific items in the game, right? Like a car or whatever. So in future, yes, the industry should be going into that direction. When will it happen? It's just a matter of time. And technology, I guess, to make it interoperable. But at least the avatar would be a nice start, right? Because, well, if you want to sell or trade your avatar, but at least play with your same character in different either metaverse or games or gameverse, that would be very interesting.
Okay, and yeah, we still have 4 minutes. I just would like to ask you a last questions to both of you. Like, what are you most excited about in the GameFi space for the next 2 years, John?
Yeah, for GameFi, I mean, I would like to see a fun, simple game because we want like I think like not the hardcore player to come on board on Web3, because to be honest, there's no really hardcore game on Web3. Like all the best hardcore game are on Web2. Like I was mentioning, like League of Legends, World of Warcraft, or Valorant. Those games are already established on Web2. So I don't expect to have like hardcore game on Web3, but just simple game like a card, tradable card, a chess, or even like a casino on Web3 can work very simple. And this business model exists already in Web2, and it shows success. Now it's more like making like a very good user experience, like seamless experience. That means the user doesn't even know that they are playing on a game, on a Web3 game. I think like if we can see something close to that, it will be already a first good step before like we move forward to the next wave for GameFi. Yeah.
All right, and Florent, last if you want to share.
Sure. Well, on my side, I'm pretty excited if there is a game that lasts more than a year, right? Because I mean, and having traditional, company releasing big titles, recognizing this scene would be interesting, right? So that it becomes more of a nice snowball effect, other as something that has so many ups and downs and hype on the scene. We want the games to be used by a lot more players. I think that's also a critical element, right? If we want this to be scalable and big, we need this adoption, to happen, and not only caters to Web3 tech very high knowledgeable people, right? So we need this to be mass markets. Last more than a year. I mean, if we have a big studio doing games, that needs to be with game evolution, updates. We were talking about interoperability of your characters or your NFT assets. Maybe within the same publisher, at least to start and use your characters in other games. That would be a great future, I think. Nice idea to have. Yeah, thanks so much.
No, but really appreciate you guys sharing on this topic. I know it's a bit short, but the thing is that we expect quite a lot on the game side, on the GameFi side, in the next 2 years, right? They said that it's through games that we're gonna have the 100 million people like joining cryptocurrencies. So yeah, I really appreciate you sharing the insights. Thanks a lot for taking the time to talk to us, especially from the two perspectives, on I would say on the Web3 side from John and maybe on the more traditional one from Florent. So really appreciate you taking the times. All right, and in the next 5 minutes, we're going to talk about decentralized finance. I think there's a lot of unfold during the event of the year. So yeah, we're going to finish this one and we're going to start for the panel in 5 minutes. So thank you, John. Thank you, Florent. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.